What's up, everybody? Welcome into the F6 Football Podcast. Cam Copeland here, and if you're on YouTube, you can see that I am all by myself. There is no Alex Rogalin here with me this week. He is on a work trip. That's right, we do have other jobs, believe it or not. He's getting the bread on his table. So while he is out doing that, we're going to have a bit of fun. We're going to take a little break from talking about each and every week the games, our upset picks, the dumpster fire game of the week, Alex's favorite, and we're going to spend some time just talking about this upcoming NFL draft. Now, a couple weeks ago, we had a little preview at the very end of the episode. I hinted at the fact that I went through all of my summer scouting rankings, compiled all my lists, listened to a bunch of draft podcasts, as I like to do, just really get a scope of how these guys are viewed and then hit the tape myself. So as of that recording, I'd only gotten a chance to go through several wide receivers. No one else. At this point, I am about 70 prospects deep of watching their 2023 film. So I have a much better take on this class. And today, what I want to do is go through some of the main positions, the positions with the highest number of prospects that are potentially going to be drafted early on in the draft. So we're not going to be talking about like the running backs or the linebackers per se. We're just going to be going through these important positions with a lot of prospects: the wide receivers, the offensive tackles, the defensive ends, the defensive tackles, and the cornerbacks, because there's so many of each of those. And I'm going to give one prospect so far from each, one who's surprised me, whose tape is a lot better than expected, who sort of either came out of nowhere or has made a jump this season. And then one prospect who has been kind of a disappointment. Now, this doesn't mean guys who are going from the first round to undrafted free agents or anything. These are just guys where their tape this year, it's been a little lackluster, been a little on the disappointing side for what was originally expected. So with that, I'm just going to jump right into it. We're going to start with offensive tackles. Now, I'm not going to lie to you. Offensive tackle scouting, it can be a bit of a grind. It's pretty tedious. There's a lot to look for. You turn on the tape, and at least for me, what I try to look for right off the bat, you see flexibility. You see how they're sitting in their stance, how comfortable they are just getting down there. Are they more upright? How's their kick step right when the play starts? How are they reacting to either a pass rush move or whatever the play may entail, whether it's pass or a run play? How are they reacting to defenders getting in their chest? Is their core stabilized, right? If they're getting bull rushed, can they sit back? Can they anchor and engage their core? And then you have to assess, well, what's the quality of the bull rush? Are these guys, sophomores or potentially guys who aren't going to be even declaring for the NFL draft? How is this going to compare to someone on an NFL field? Is this translatable? And then, see how they use their arms to extend. And just there's so much that goes into it with the footwork, and it's all small, small differences among a lot of the prospects. But the small differences make a huge difference, right? If you put your head down slightly on a play, you can fall forward. And if that happens 1 out of every 20 plays, you're not going to be a great tackle, because that means you're going to be allowing lots of pressures. So to get into the guy, probably one of the biggest surprises so far has to be my man Talisa Fuaga. Now, a lot of people are getting hip to him now, especially there was a Pro Football Focus podcast where they brought him up, and now all of a sudden everyone's talking about him. He is currently my 4th ranked tackle, and here's why. He's a redshirt junior out of Oregon State, 6'6", 334. So he's a big dude. And he has insane flexibility, footwork, and athleticism for his size. His feet are moving quickly. He has great acceleration off the line and can block downfield. He has great footwork to gain positioning, especially on inside zone plays. He's really quick to pivot, which is something you really don't see a lot from offensive linemen at any level. He has a great anchor, balance, core strength. And now he's obviously not without his deficiencies, right? He's not going to be a top 5 pick. His grip could improve, particularly in the run game. He doesn't necessarily finish the play. It's a lot of palming, getting guys from getting them off the play and then being content. He needs to really learn how to, use that grip to the point where in both the run game and the pass game, where he can maximize his hand placement and not lose it or get his arms knocked away. But with his athleticism and movement skills and just how he's been playing so far at Oregon State, I realistically think that he's going to be the third tackle off the board at this point. It's going to be the first two everyone loves talking about, Olu Fashanu and Joe Alt. And then it's pretty up in the air. There's a lot of talk on CJ Latham, Amarius Mims, who got hurt, unfortunately. But Fuaga, I think, really has a chance to step into that third role and I have him graded as an early to mid first rounder right now. So can't get much more surprising than that. Now moving on to the disappointment of the position, Kingsley Suamatea. He is only 20 years old. He's a redshirt sophomore from BYU. And the reason he's a disappointment, it's just how he's developed, really. Now, he's an athletic freak. He has allegedly hit 21.5 miles per hour last season as a 318-pound freshman on a dead sprint, which is absurd, right? Those are some crazy speeds you hear about for NFL running backs and receivers sitting on the field. He didn't hit it on the field, but still, 318 pounds hitting 21.5 miles per hour is ridiculous. Now, he has a build, but he lacks flexibility and any sort of hip fluidity right now. He keeps his hips high when mirroring, and that leaves him really susceptible to power rushes as well as dips from speed rushers around the outside. So he has decent balance sort of in a phone booth, but when you ask him to move around too much, he really looks like he's still getting comfortable in his own body, right? He's 20 years old. He has this monstrous frame, and he doesn't have great technique. So he could be the kind of guy who comes in as this developmental swing tackle. He's played both sides. He played right tackle last season. He's left tackle this season. And if I didn't mention this, he's 6'6", 315. So he's a big dude. He could still afford to gain a little bit of muscle even at that size. And right now, not necessarily play style, but I'm comping him to Braden Daniels because Braden Daniels was a promising swing tackle coming out. He was drafted by Washington in the 4th round. And I think that's the kind of guy you're going to get with him. Someone who's not ready to play for the NFL. He'll probably be drafted well ahead in the 4th round, but someone who you can probably put on the field year 2 or 3 after he gains some technique and sort of settles in to his body. Now, moving on to the next position, we got wide receivers. These are one of my favorites to scout. And I've gone through about 15 receivers at this point. And the biggest surprise to me in the entire draft so far is Troy Franklin out of Oregon. He's a junior, 6'3", only 187 pounds at 6'3". So he's not just slender, he's skinny, right? There's some injury concerns if you have him on deep crossers over the middle, getting lit up by a safety. But because he's that size right now, he has some otherworldly acceleration. At 6'3", his release package, his pivot, his stance, his split step right out the gate to sudden change of direction is pretty crazy. Now, he also has elite top end speed. He allegedly runs a 4.3 40, and he has an extensive route tree. It's crazy. He plays with Bo Nix, right? And it almost seems like Bo Nix is holding him back at times. I have written throughout my reports, missed him on a wide open throw, didn't even look at him on his best rep of the day. He has an extensive route tree. He can pull away from guys deep. And I just need to see more of him throughout the season to see, am I seeing things no one else is? Am I the crazy one here? Because right now I have him bordering Emeka Egbuka as my wide receiver 3 or 4. I'm at that tier, which again, according to every list out there, is pretty wild. Now, again, he's not without his deficiencies. He's not a contested catch guy. There's some knee angle stuff with his depth that can be fixed when he does accelerate laterally. And he's not the best after the catch, but he is still a home run threat with that speed. So he's one of my favorite players to watch right now. And I'll be watching him really closely because I try to approach the tape initially with sort of an approach where I don't want too many outside opinions to influence what I see on film. And then when I go back to it and sort of understand why everyone has them ranked where they are, I can look at it with that different lens and sort of assess whether or not my initial assessment was accurate or not. So he's one of my favorite players in the draft right now, based on where I have him versus where his consensus is. Now, the biggest disappointment at the position is Adonai Mitchell, AD Mitchell. He's a junior from Texas, 6'4", 196. He has really reliable hands, and he's a former 5-star recruit. And he's still getting all this buzz because of his pedigree, and he's still often targeted, but he doesn't seem to have the current skill set to translate seamlessly into the NFL. I wrote this in my notes for him. He lacks burst, footwork, physicality, creativity, and overall route running knowledge and refinement needed to be a starting NFL wide receiver. So he doesn't create his own separation. He doesn't really pull away at the end of routes, right? He doesn't help his quarterback in that regard. And he often has rounded routes as well. There's not a lot of suddenness to his game, whether that's mid route on the break or he has a pretty vanilla release package as well. So I'm definitely going to be looking at him a bit more throughout the season to see if he improves. But right now, he definitely looks like a secondary target on that team at best. All right, now getting into the defensive side of the ball. I'm going to start with defensive tackles. Now, I don't love this defensive tackle class. I'm not as high on Johnny Newton as a lot of other people are. I still have a late first round grade on him. But my surprise in this class is Tyler Davis. Tyler Davis out of Clemson. He is a redshirt senior, so he's on the older side, but he's 6'2", 300, so he's a bit shorter and still weighs 300. And he's shot out of a cannon, man. He can just get off the line so quick. Now, I'm usually more annoyed with Clemson defensive linemen. For instance, last year, Miles Murphy and Brian Brzee, they really didn't know any pass rush moves. And Tyler Davis isn't the most technical guy, but he is, he has great penetration in run defense, and he has a great first step in pass rush. And you can really mold that even though he's a redshirt senior. He's still 22, 23 years old. So it's not like he's an old guy by any means. He's just a little behind in his technique. And he's not going to be a first round pick. He's not this two gapping nose or anything like that, but he is a good rotational pass rusher and even run defender if you're asking someone to penetrate and get in the backfield, trying to create those TFLs. If you have the players around him to support that, I think he could really be a steal. I have a second round grade on him right now, late second, I believe. So I'll be watching him the rest of the season as well to see where he lands. Now, biggest disappointment by far. This is the biggest disappointment that I've seen, at least in my opinion, for watching all prospects throughout all positions, and that's Mason Smith. All right, Mason Smith, a redshirt junior from LSU, 6'6", 315, big dude, and he was also a 5-star recruit. He had very high pedigree coming out, and he doesn't really seem to have any pass rush moves whatsoever. And he just simply doesn't put up NFL caliber tape. He's worth a shot because of his size, but he's pushed off the ball easily in the run game. He doesn't have the pass rush profile. And honestly, he still hasn't even filled out his frame, which speaks volumes to his raw physique, right? How special this guy is physically. If he's 315, 6'6", and has a slender frame, it's almost like Evan Neal from a couple years ago at offensive tackle. He's just a bigger dude, and therefore he could dominate the college competition. Mason Smith isn't dominating the college competition, and we see how well Evan Neal's doing on the offensive side of the ball. Most pressures allowed by any player in the NFL currently. So I'm just not very high on him. I have his tape graded as undrafted free agent. Obviously, this guy is not going to be UDFA. His consensus right now on the 2024 consensus big board from NFL mock draft database is 23 overall. So this guy is going to be drafted at some point. I do think once teams start watching his tape more closely, he will slip into day 2. But, a guy with this special build is not going to slip too far in the draft. I'm just disappointed with his performance up to this point. All right, now getting into my absolute favorite position to scout, defensive ends. And my biggest surprise here is Chop Robinson. Chop Robinson is insane. He's a junior from Penn State, 6'3", 250, and his explosiveness is unlike anything we've seen in recent years, including Will Anderson. Obviously, he's not as refined as Will Anderson. I don't even necessarily have him as a blue chip talent in this class. He's a blue chip conversation. He has a bit to go with technique and whatnot, but his get off at 250 honestly shouldn't be possible. He looks like Micah Parsons on his first step. And a lot of people are saying that because Micah Parsons went to Penn State and people love same school scouting. And it kind of reminds me of last year's Kalijah Kancey and Aaron Donald comp. People were saying they both went to Pitt. They're the same size. They both have great technique and insane get off. So they're the same player. And then they conveniently leave out that Aaron Donald has 2-inch longer arms and still somehow bench presses probably double what Kalijah Kancey is. They're different players, right? Micah Parsons is stronger. He has better functional strength anyway. Apparently, Chop benched over 400 pounds and while running a 4.4 40, which is ridiculous. But Parsons' translatable strength is better. He has a more solid build. He has more raw aggression and better technique. They're not the same player, but Chop could become something like that with his raw ability to just get off and make something happen without technique. It's wild. If you want to watch something just mind blowing, turn on any of his games, and he will impress you for sure. Now, the biggest disappointment so far has been Jared Verse, and Jared Verse, I still have a first round grade on him. All right, don't get me wrong, but last year, going into summer scouting, I had him tiered with Will Anderson. I had him right below him. He was a surefire top 10 pick. I had him going in the top 7 of most mock drafts. A lot of people had him 8 to Atlanta. I thought he was even better than that. This year, he has gained a bit more weight, and it slowed him down. It slowed down his release. He doesn't have the pop that he used to. He doesn't have the same speed to power. Now, those of you who don't know Jared Verse, most schools wanted him as a tight end, but he really wanted to play defensive end. So he went to Albany. He was a high school basketball. He ran track. He actually won states for the 4x400 relay. And then COVID hit, and he built a home gym with his dad, and he gained almost 40 pounds. He just put in the work, and he came back a different player. He transferred to FSU, Florida State, and he got 17 tackles for losses and 9 sacks last season on a stunted season. Pre-injury, it was top 10 tape, hands down. There's really not much you can do to argue that. If you watch it, you will probably agree. But then this year, he wants to be that base defensive end. He gained some weight, and he's still a monster run defender. I just think that he's still adjusting to the weight. He will probably improve upon dropping some of that weight and find his ideal weight moving into the next level. But it's still been just a disappointing season overall for him. Now, getting into the last position I wanted to go through for today, the cornerbacks. Now, cornerbacks are also hard to scout. You definitely need the all 22 tape, and you need the game tape as well, just to see different angles, to see how they can their hip angles, how they can accelerate in different directions and whatnot. So it takes a while, but my biggest surprise so far has been Kamari Lassiter from Georgia. He's a junior, 6 feet tall, only weighs 180 pounds. I believe that's exactly Devon Witherspoon's build, so it's not too light or anything. Definitely not the same player as Witherspoon, but he is currently I don't like this ranking right now, but he's currently my second ranked corner behind Kool-Aid McKinstry. He's exceptional from cover 3. He's probably the best cover 3 corner in this class, and it's used so often throughout the NFL. He can still fit into any scheme, and he stays low when he's not in full stride, and is very disciplined in his pivots and his hips and in breaking into that sprint. So he usually doesn't fall for false moves too often. He stays low, stays with his man, and he can click and close pretty quickly. Now, there's some concerns with his play style and decisions versus vertical routes, and he's definitely not a ball hawk, but he's a very well-rounded player I was impressed with his tape. And I'm giving him a late first round grade where I wasn't necessarily expecting to do so. So he's really impressed so far this season. He is also physical at the catch point. He proved that against Xavier Legette, who I spoke about a couple weeks ago on this pod in the South Carolina game. And I do think he's just going to enter the NFL and immediately be an impact cover 3 player, while he may have some hiccups in other schemes. Now, the biggest disappointment, again, like Jared Verse, this guy is not a disappointing prospect. Teams will still be happy to have him. Just his tape up to the season hasn't been what I expected. And that's Kalen King. Also from Penn State, he's a junior. He's 5'11", 191, pretty solid build for a corner. Nothing crazy, but he looks filled out for his frame in a good way. And he's touted as his top 15, top 20 type of player, but he just isn't playing like it. He gives the inside track too easily for completions over the middle, and he's just not a true lockdown corner. There's some issues with the squat coverage on the outside as well. He's not as fluid as advertised and breaking out of that stance specifically. And all this in combination with being 5'11", he just doesn't seem like a surefire first round outside corner to me. Now, I still have a second round grade on him. I still think he will be a good corner, but he hasn't played on the inside at all so far in his collegiate career. And I think he could be a very good slot receiver. He gets after it in the run game. He's quick to react and come downhill. He can play press when needed, but he's also great from off to close inside if he has a direct path as opposed to cutting across. So I think that teams might be very happy drafting him and playing him inside to start. And he could become a very good inside outside corner. I'm just a little disappointed from the tape that I've seen so far. So that's it. Those are the guys the biggest surprises and disappointments so far this season. To recap, the biggest surprises: offensive tackle, I have Talisa Fuaga. Wide receiver, I have Troy Franklin. Defensive tackle, Tyler Davis. Defensive end, Chop Robinson. And then cornerback, Kamari Lassiter. And then the biggest disappointments so far, who by no means are necessarily bad players of their own, just the biggest disappointments so far are Kingsley Suamatea, A.D. Mitchell, Mason Smith, Jared Verse, and Kalen King. So I'm really excited about this class. I think that it is a very good class. I have fewer first round grades than I'd expect. Right now, I have 18 non-quarterbacks as with first round grades, with 5 fringe first round, second round. I'm still deciding between, and of course that's going to change a bit over time as we get further in the season. For some context, last year at this time, I actually like last year's class a lot more than many people. I had 22 non-quarterback first grades at this point, so we'll see where it lands when all is said and done. But I do have a lot of day 2 grades. Most of the 70 players that I've gotten through so far have been on that day 2, have been given that day 2 grade, and I have a lot more who I think are going to end up there as well. So I think this is a deep class. I'm looking forward to getting more into it as the season progresses. And with that, I hope you enjoyed this different type of show. I know it was solo, and we all miss Alex Roglin, but it was a good chance to really talk about the upcoming NFL draft in a bit more detail. I am excited to get my first iteration of my big board, ideally the top 50 non-quarterbacks, out next week. It'll be on my blog, Camalytics. So make sure you check that out. I will be posting it on our site as well. And if you enjoyed this, make sure you do like, comment, and subscribe. It really does help us out. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. And as always, have a wonderful day, guys, and we'll see you next week. Peace.